Hello, everybody. I'm Jackie K. Cooper, and my guest today is my good friend, and I say that truthfully because we've known each other a long time, Sheldon Siegel. Hey, Sheldon.
Hi, Jackie. It's great to be with you. I hope all is well in Georgia.
Yep. Yeah, it's so amazing because we have known each other. I remember so well. I reviewed one of your books early on. I think it was probably one of the first ones. And the next thing I knew, you sent me all these other books you'd written in that series. No, it wasn't the first, it was probably like the fourth or fifth one. And then you sent me the books, and then I had to read them all to get caught up. And how many, let's see, it's Mike Daly and Rosie Hernandez. Those are the main characters. You've written one standalone.
Right.
But how many Rosie and Mike books have you written?
We just released the 15th. It's called Dead Coin, and you happen to have it there.
I just happen to have it here. But Sheldon, I have never asked you. You're retired now, but you were a practicing attorney. What made you decide to start writing? Was the talent just there, and you just couldn't deny it?
Oh, you're very kind. It was one of those things that, and if you talk to a lot of writers, they'll say the same thing. It was one of those things that I always wanted to do. I wanted to try to see if I could write a novel. And, there is nothing in my background to suggest that I should be any good at this. I'm from Chicago. I grew up in the Chicago suburbs. I went to college at the University of Illinois in Champaign and studied accounting. I went to law school at UC Berkeley, and I've worked for the last 40 years. Now I finally did retire, in big law firms in downtown San Francisco, the last almost 30 years with a firm called Shepard, Mullen, Richter, and Hampton, which is one of the biggest firms in the country. And I was a corporate and securities lawyer. I've never handled a criminal case. And
which is all you write about.
I know. I've written 15 novels about murder trials, which I have never handled. I don't know what I'm talking about, but people think I do. And
because you sound like you do.
I guess so. I have gotten, honest to God, I've gotten mail from people on death row at San Quentin, which is located here in the Bay Area, not far from actually where we live here in Marin County. I've gotten, mail from guys on death row saying, I have read your books in the prison library. You seem like a smart lawyer. Would you be interested in handling my appeal? And I always write them back and say, that's a really bad idea.
Yeah.
But, for some reason I always wanted to write a book about a murder in a big law firm, because they say you should write about what you know. And that was the germ of the story.
You were already practicing law when you wrote your first novel.
Oh, yeah. I'd been a lawyer for like 15 years. I graduated law school in 1983, and I started writing my first novel in 1995. And I set a goal of trying to finish it by my 40th birthday, which was in 1998. And I finished the manuscript, 3 days before my 40th birthday. And I figured that was it. I accomplished what I wanted to accomplish. I took one creative writing class at our local bookstore. And, lo and behold, which authors are never supposed to say in their books, I finished this thing. I edited it several times, many, many times, in fact. It took me 3 years to write it. Most of which, by the way, I wrote on a laptop on the Larkspur Ferry, commuting from my house here in Marin County down into San Francisco and back. And that became Special Circumstances, my first novel. And to give you an idea of what a lark this was, I didn't know I was writing a series until Bantam Dell, which was the biggest imprint at Random House, offered me a substantial six-figure advance for that book and said, it's a series, right? You started the second book. And I said, oh, yeah, I started it. I ran over to my computer and started typing a second book. I had no idea what it was going to be about till I started writing it.
Let me stop you there and let me fill in, because, I went to law school also.
Oh.
I practiced law for 10 years. Hated every minute of it. you know, I wanted to be writing books, reviewing movies, that type of thing. And I ended up doing that while also having a government job. But you enjoyed the legal profession.
Yeah, I mean, I did. I was not one of those lawyers who is just counting the minutes till it was time to go home. But on the other hand, I mean, it's a very interesting job. It's a very challenging job. I liked what I did. I liked putting transactions together, but it's a very demanding job, and the burnout rate is very high. And, I got lucky because, once the novels became successful, thankfully, I'm grateful for that every day. I didn't work full time, after 2000, when the first book came out and hit the New York Times list. So
Now, I did not know that.
yeah, I cannot.
Part-timer way back.
Pardon me?
You were a part-timer way back.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I was able, luckily, the books did well. So I was able to work a much more relaxed schedule. Now, part-time lawyering for big law firms like the place I worked was almost a full-time schedule at
I was going
times.
to say it was 60 as opposed to 80 hours a week.
Yeah, well, for me, it was more like, 25 or 30 hours a week. But there were times, I mean, right up until the end when there were 60-hour weeks and there were late nights. And, it was very demanding at times.
But you wanted to write. Was Special Circumstances your first jab at getting a book published? Had you written other stories that you didn't get a publisher, or were you lucky and got it right off the bat?
No, that was the very first novel I had ever written. And I do not have a drawer full of, short stories. I'd never written any short stories until, later on. I did a few years ago do a short story prequel for all the Mike and Rosie stories, which I had a lot of fun with. But no, the only writing I had done was legal writing. And I joke, I'm a lawyer. So, and a corporate lawyer writes, like securities offerings about .com companies. So you could argue some of that was kind of fiction. But all kidding aside, I had to kind of unlearn lawyer writing and learn novel writing, because lawyers, I mean, you were a lawyer for for a number of years, and lawyer writing is different, because if you're a transactional lawyer, you're trying to document what people have agreed to with an eye toward, if they get into a fight about this in 5 years, you want it to be very clear what they agreed to.
Absolutely.
And fiction writing is different. Readers fill in a lot of blanks. Readers know what courtrooms look like, and readers know kind of what's going on in the world at the time. So and it has to flow. It has to.
You're one of the most readable writers I know.
Oh, thank you.
It does flow. I mean, you start and then the story just flows and holds your interest. And I every time I review one of your books, I think about the person who just picks this book up randomly and has no idea of the previous novels. But I do feel like you could do that.
Oh, I like to think so. I mean, when back in the days, my big publishers like me to say, "Oh, you can read them in any order," and I've always said, well, it's better if you like series to start at the beginning, because the characters age and things change in their lives. But I write the kind of books that I like to read, and my goals are really modest. I'm trying to entertain people on airplanes.
Yeah.
I'm not, and and that's hard to do, by the way. Writing mainstream entertaining fiction is a skill all its own. I mean, I'm not going to win, literary awards for it, but I'm not, I have no I couldn't write literary novels. I mean, that's why I like, you write so beautifully, the memoirs that you write, and they have depth and they have, a lot of substance. And not to diminish too much about what I do, but the reality of it is, if you're reading, if you're reading my stories, if you're seeing, symbolism and metaphors and deep meaning, you're reading deeper than I'm writing.
But the relationships, that's where you shine, Sheldon. The relationships of the characters, whether they're the ones who flow through all of your novels or if they're new people coming on the scene, you always feel like the reader feels like they're connected to them.
Yeah, I mean, and that's really what I'm shooting for. The story is about Mike Daly and Rosie Fernandez, who in the early books are working small-time criminal defense attorneys working in private practice. In later books, they return to the public defender's office where they met and they got their start. And in the last 3 or 4 books, Rosie actually is elected public defender, and Mike is the head of the the felony division. But the books are about Mike and Rosie. It's about their world. How they relate to the world and each other. And now they have this big, extended family. And, there are times when I think, well, I kind of gotta, let the next generation take over, but my readers won't let me do that very often.
No, they're latched down to, Mike and Rosie. What was the inspiration for Mike and Rosie? Was there
that
combination of people?
Yeah, that happened mostly by accident too. Mike, Mike is the narrator in the books. He's originally a public defender, then in private practice. He is a guy from the Sunset District in San Francisco, the son of a police officer. His older brother was a football star at St. Ignatius and University of California. The older brother was killed in Vietnam. Mike was, Tommy, the older brother, was the football star. Mike was the brain. His younger brother, Pete, became a cop like his dad. And then there's a baby sister, Mary, who's a school teacher down in LA, and I really need to write a story about her someday. But Mike is the guy you want standing next to you when you get in trouble. And he, after his brother died, he came from a very religious Catholic family. He became a priest for a few years. That didn't work out. So he went to law school and became a public defender. And when he became a public defender, he met a more experienced public defender named Rosie Fernandez. And Rosie is from San Francisco's Mission District. And she went to Mercy High School, where near St. Ignatius, and San Francisco State, and Hastings Law School.
And all of these are real places and real locations that you describe.
Right. And so Mike and Rosie met at the public defender's office and really liked each other. They got married, they had a daughter, and then they got divorced because they didn't get along very well, at least at home. Now, Mike sounds just like me. And I cop to this all the time. Mike, it's getting harder and harder to distinguish Mike's voice from my own voice. We've kind of merged, except for the fact that I am not a Catholic guy from the south side of San Francisco. I'm a Jewish guy from the south side of Chicago. But, I grew up in a neighborhood where half the people were Jewish and half the people were Catholic, and we had a lot more in common than we had differences. In the original intent in the first book, the accused in that book is a Jewish corporate and securities attorney who had twin sons named Alan and Stephen. That's me. Okay. And that person, that Joel Friedman in the first book, was supposed to narrate the story. And I wrote 100 pages of that book with Joel as the narrator. And then I realized Joel's going to spend the next 100 pages in jail, and I can't have a book full of jail visits.
Mm-hmm.
So I took Joel's voice and grafted it on to the Catholic defense attorney, the former public defender, former priest.
That is fascinating.
I know, I got it all wrong, but the voice was the same. And Mike, by the way, is very loosely based on a former colleague of mine at our big law firm, who's now retired, who was, in fact, a former priest who became a lawyer. So the whole first book, I like to joke about, Mike sounds just like me. Joel sounds just like me, except I've never been accused of murder. And my wife, Linda, says it's a whole book about you talking to yourself. And I said, yeah, kind of. So I'm writing in the first person, and I need someone for Mike to talk to, because I couldn't have the entire book being in his head.
Okay.
So I decided he needs a law partner. And if you read this genre, the closest in many respects, I mean, John Grisham is more of a thriller writer. My books are more courtroom drama, really more mystery novels. But if you read this genre, Steve Martini has a criminal defense attorney at the center of his stories. That attorney has an older mentor, Harry Hines. And John Lesquia, who's based here in the Bay Area, a good friend of mine.
That's who I would associate you the most closely with.
Yeah, I mean, our stuff is in many respects. He writes in third person, I write in first person, but our stuff is very similar. And we, in fact, talked about having our characters visit each other in our books at some point. But John's attorney, Dismas Hardy, has a mentor, David Freeman, an older, burnt out. So I decided, well, I need Mike to have someone to talk to. It probably should be something other than an older, male. And so I decided, okay, we're going to have a strong female lead here, or co-lead. And at the time I was working on a big transaction with an attorney in Connecticut. I think it was at GE. And I never met her in person, but her name was Susan Fernandez. And I talked to her on the phone for every day for 3 months. I still have no idea what she looks like. And I was working on this first draft. And I said, okay, I'm going to have a strong female lead who Mike's going to work with. And it's going to be Rosita Fernandez. I changed the first name because my mom had a friend named Rosita. And Rosie Fernandez became really a second lead in these stories. And I decided, okay, well, they will have met at the public defender's office. And then I decided, I need tension between the two of them as well. So they're going to be divorced. And I wasn't sure how that was going to fly. I've only been married once for 35 years to Linda. We just celebrated our 35th anniversary. But thank you. But Mike and Rosie, the books really are about Mike and Rosie. And by the third or fourth book, they have settled into a permanent, non-married.
Don't say permanent. Don't say permanent.
Well, you never know.
Every book I read, I hope.
It could happen.
They love each other.
Ex-spouses with benefits who are more married than most married people. And over time, Rosie is the brains of the whole operation. Rosie is the person who runs the public defender's office. Rosie ran the little law firm that she and Mike operated for many years. And, the feedback really from the very beginning in the first book was, we really like Rosie. She needs to be on stage. We like the interaction between Mike and Rosie. So I would like to say that I planned this
interaction. I mean, you couldn't have Rosie without Mike, and you couldn't have Mike without Rosie.
That's exactly right. Yeah,
it's just the perfect balance.
Yeah. No, thank you. I mean, reviewers have said it's like, for viewers of yours of a certain age like us, Tracy and Hepburn, right. It's the back and forth that people really enjoy. And I look at it as one long story. It's just Mike and Rosie, and they age within the books, and their kids grow up, and and every year, the readers get to look in and see what's going on with the two of them.
And get to catch up on the guy who owns the bar, who's a relative, the two kids, Rosie's mother, the old guy who is fantastic. What is his name?
Yes, Nick the Dick.
Yes.
My contribution to American literature, Nick Hansen,
and fictionally he was in its own TV series about him, starring Danny DeVito.
That's right.
I thought I had it right. I love it.
Oh yeah, no, I mean, I needed, and Nick the Dick happened by accident.
He just comes in.
Yeah,
you're just going on the story, and here comes.
Yeah, and my editor for the first couple of books, Ann Harris at Random House, said, okay, after the second book, no more of this. It's a one-note character. And I told her the readers love this guy.
Yes.
He's
Where
going
do
to
I
be.
send the letter?
Yeah, he's going to just drop in for one or two scenes in every book. You never know where. And I think he's 95 now, and he's still running
Going
around.
strong, and his daughter's taken over the agency. And
yeah,
I could talk about this all day, but we've only got a limited amount of time. But I want to talk too, because you were with big publishers during your career, and you have told me many times self-publishing is the key. I'm not misquoting you, am I?
Yep. Yeah, I must tell you, I mean, I did my first 5 books with big New York publishers, and, I had great experiences with them.
Mm-hmm.
They gave me big 6-figure advances. They put my kids through college, and I'm very grateful for that. But like many people in the publishing industry, my sales plateaued. I did 2 with Random House. The second book did a little less than the first. And they decided they didn't want the third book, which I thought was a mistake. And so then I did 3 with Penguin Putnam, which of course is now merged with Random House, but that's another story. And it's
what comes round goes round.
It's interesting. Yeah. And then I did 3 with them. They all made the New York Times list. They all got really good reviews. And but the third one didn't do as well as the second. And they decided, well, we're sorry, but the trend line is not what we want. And so they didn't take the next book. And then I did a couple with a small publisher here in San Francisco, and they went out of business during the Great Recession. But fortunately, I was able to get the rights back. So, I like to tell people that, I put 5 books on the New York Times list. I sold millions of copies in many languages. And, by the 5th book, I was essentially done with, traditional big publishers, because I was lucky that that Putnam picked up the series midstream, because that probably wouldn't happen today. Anyway, and I figured, okay, I've had a good run. That's a long, good run, and it was very, I did very well, and I'm always going to be grateful for that. So then we shopped it around a little bit more, and then around 2010, Amazon self-publishing became a thing. And the one thing I did, not through any grand design, but the one thing I did was, fortuitous, was I went back to both the small publisher before they went out of business, and to both Random House and to Penguin Putnam, and said, I'd like the rights back to all these books. And Penguin said yes immediately. Random House waited around a little while, and I had to pay them a small amount of money for it, because the books were still theoretically in print. And so I had 7 books that had been, professionally edited. I had a big audience already. I went back and re-edited all 7 books, which I think was a good idea. You think they're really good, but when you're on your 7th book, if you go back and read your first one, you just can't believe it was published. So the original version of Special Circumstances, my first book, was 110,000 words. The version you can buy now is 90,000 words. And I didn't take out any chapters. You know how it is with editing, Jackie. You just keep. So I had 7 books. Linda, my wife, the woman who worked on Forrest Gump and the Star Wars movies.
Yay!
I know. Well, Linda, if you could figure out how to make the feather move in Forrest Gump, you could figure out how to, format an ebook. And, she's also very good, graphically, you would not be surprised. And she did new covers for all the books. And so we teed it up completely we started playing with it about 2010. We had everything back in 2014, and we put the first 7 books up. And around the same time, Amazon had not just released the Kindle, they had done, and Apple had done the iPad, and then Apple did the iPhone, and ebooks exploded. The market just it still is an ebook market, in genre fiction. And we had just the right product for that. And so And now I've done 8 more books since then, and I'm doing them faster, and I control the whole process. I decide when the release dates are. And so,
But it is basically a book a year, isn't it?
yeah, well, last year I did 2, and I'm trying to do 2 this year because
Whoa,
I know that's hard, that's quick.
that's great.
Yeah, I mean, of course, the romance writers write them, once every couple of weeks, and boy, those people are doing really well, and I give them a lot of,
Well, and you have the authors who write them 2 or 3 or 4 a year, but they have a co-writer.
some of them do, yeah. So anyway, I mean, this has been, this second life of these books, and then of course the new ones has turned into just this great second act, and I'm really, really grateful. The books are all available, in ebook, but also in print and in audio. We found just a wonderful narrator, a guy named Tim Campbell, who's an actor down in LA who does audiobooks, and we redid the whole series with him. And audiobooks are a big deal these days.
Oh yeah, oh yeah. But now, publicity wise, does Amazon do any advertising on the books, or do you have to do your own advertising, or how does the word get out there?
Well, we do. I mean, there's a couple things. I mean, as social media it's a big deal. At the beginning, if you got your book up on Amazon and Amazon, put it in the right spot on its site, you would sell a lot of copies, pretty organically. About 5 years ago, Amazon started offering paid advertising, and that's a big, big deal. And nowadays, if you don't pay Amazon to advertise your books on their site, you're going to have a lot of trouble breaking through. When we first did a couple of ebooks, we kind of experimented with it around 2012, and there were about 80,000 books in the Amazon self-publishing store, in the whole Kindle store.
Yeah.
Nowadays, more than 2 million books are self-published every year.
Whew.
It's very, very crowded, and about the only thing you can do other than trying to go viral on TikTok, or we do Facebook, we do Facebook ads and Facebook, non-paid advertising, but we focus our paid advertising on Amazon, and that's been very effective. But as the market has gotten so crowded, it's harder. A lot of people are getting into this.
All right, before we run out of time, because they only give me a certain amount of time here, but what's the next book? When's it coming out?
Oh, okay. Well, the next book is a story where Mike and Rosie are going to represent a guy, a former cop who worked with Mike's brother Pete when Pete was a cop, and he is accused. He's working as a bouncer at a strip club on Broadway in San Francisco, in one of those neighborhoods where you probably don't want to spend a lot of time if you can avoid it, although it's right there by North Beach in Chinatown. And the bouncer is going to be accused of murdering one of the dancers in the alley behind the strip club. They had words in the bar before she left after Last Dance. So the working title is Last Dance.
Last Dance. And when do you anticipate it being released?
Well, I am hoping by the end of the year.
Okay, that's not that long. So
I know, and I'm about a third of the way through the manuscript, and I like the way it's laying out. But my project for the next 3 or 4 months is to try to finish it. Okay,
people can get Dead Coin through Amazon. Can they get it through your website?
Actually, the easiest way is to do it straight through Amazon. Bookstores can order the paperbacks, but you'll get them faster if you do them through Amazon. And the ebooks are exclusively through Amazon. Audiobooks are on Amazon, Audible, and Apple, I think.
What if they want an autographed print copy?
If you want an autographed print copy, send me an email and I will make arrangements to get it to you. our highly sophisticated fulfillment department, who you are now looking at, will get you a book. I will take it over to the post office. I do that almost every week or two, and I'd be delighted to send people autograph copies. Or if you'd like, we have book plates. Remember when people used to have book plates?
Oh, yes.
So I've
Yes.
got those too. If you want to do it, you want to buy the book, I'll send you a signed book plate as well.
Sheldon, I've been knowing you a long time. I've enjoyed everything you've ever written. And I look forward to reading more and more and more. So,
Oh, you're very kind, Jackie. You know, I still think very fondly of, we saw each other in person, I think
in
only
Dahlonega.
and it was 2011.
Was it 2011?
2011, and we had, I mean, for your viewers who aren't familiar, Jackie was involved in organizing this just wonderful book event, this book festival in this beautiful little town called Dahlonega. And Linda and I came out, and Jackie and his wife Terry, they treated us like royalty. We felt like rock stars for the weekend. It was just glorious.
It was one of those things that I didn't organize Dahlonega. They came to me and said, did I have any recommendations? And I thought, I wonder if Sheldon would come. And you say this about certain people in your life, and but it's true in this case. You and Linda came out, and it was like we had been friends forever. And the four of us just blended. And it was one of the great weekends of our lives. We had such a good time with y'all. And again, you are my talented friend, and I am so proud of you and so pleased that we got this chance to talk today. Thank you to Sheldon Siegel, author of Dead Coin.